I'm Jim Knight, co-founder of the Instructional Coaching Group, and you're listening to Coaching Conversations, where I talk with coaching experts from around the world so that all of us can learn better ways to make an unmistakably positive impact on the people around us. I'm really excited to talk with Dr. Shannon Panfilio-Padden today, talking about her research on instructional coaching and math instruction and the outcomes she got from her study. So thanks for joining the conversation. It's going to be fun to talk with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invite. I'm excited to share.
Now, I poked around on the internet and I found that you're an assistant professor at California State University in Stanislaus, which is in Turlock, California. Can you just tell us a little bit more about your background?
Absolutely. So I've been in education in some capacity for over 20 years. I started my career in preschool when I was going through college, preschool and daycare, where I started to really fall in love with education. And then I worked in elementary schools for a school district for over 10 years. And part of that time I was teaching, and then part of the time I was instructional coaching. And now I have the privilege of teaching future teachers here in the Central Valley in California. And I actually got promoted to associate professor. So that's exciting. And I also am the coordinator for the multiple subject credential program here at Stan State. So I teach future elementary school teachers mathematics, how to teach math, and then also am coordinator of the program.
Very cool. Stan State is a little easier to say than Stanislaus County University, California State.
I agree.
So what got you interested in this topic?
I blame it 100% on you, Jim, actually. Because when I was new to the teaching profession, I had a principal actually invite me to be part of some cognitive coaching training really early in my career. She saw leadership skill in me that I didn't see in myself. So she was a true coach and mentor to me. And then you actually came and offered training to our school district. And so your questions that you brought to our attention, such as why is professional development not always impactful, really got me thinking of how can we do things better? How can we take back learning into our schools and enhance the teaching and learning within buildings? And then I centered around my dissertation actually around that question that you asked in your instructional coaching book, first one. And
well, that's cool.
Yeah. And so I did that study. And then when I was still instructional coaching, after I'd gotten my doctorate and worked with university professors at a local university, is when I started really diving in deep, because they have permissions to do the research in the schools. So we tried some new things and implemented some things to see if we could help teachers feel more supported when they are learning new things. So it's 100% your fault.
And it just came out. You just published an article that summarizes your research.
Yes. And so that article is titled The Impact of Instructional Coaching on Elementary Mathematics Teaching in the International Journal of Mentoring and Coaching in Education. And I was co-authored that article with the two colleagues from the local university.
Very cool. Well, congratulations. It's great. I love the article.
Thank you.
And I was impressed by the results, and then I hunted you down and said, "Would you please come and talk about the study?" Tell us about sort of how you set up your research and what your research questions were. What were you studying in the study?
What we were finding when our ISAT testing results would come back at the end of every school year or in the summer, that our math scores were not improving in proficiency levels or growth areas. And it was interesting because the teachers at the school site, they had been receiving really intensive really high quality professional development for 3 years, specifically on mathematics, and really focused on student discourse, focused on mathematical topics such as geometry, algebraic thinking, how to use math models when teaching. And they would attend these professional developments, but monthly or bi-monthly. But also what they got is the math professionals coming into the school and meeting with them during PLC meetings to talk through student thinking, student learning, bringing back formative assessments. And then the math specialists would go into the classrooms and model lessons for the teachers. But we were not seeing an increase in student learning. And so what we kind of came to the conclusion of is that year 4, what can we do different? Because what we're doing isn't necessarily working, but we know it's high quality and research based. And they're pushing into our building. So how could we do something slightly different so that instructional practices are being utilized and students are learning? So our 2 questions that we asked were, does an instructional coaching partnership increase teachers' implementation of mathematics strategies? And our second question was, will growth in student learning increase? And so we made some slight changes. And I think that's what the exciting part of our study is that you don't have to throw everything out that you're doing to make good increases in both teacher and student learning. You can tweak a few things and then things can change.
What did the coaching look like when you did the coaching? What were some of the things the coaches did?
So I had the opportunity to attend several of your trainings in Kansas City, and then you pushed into our district. So that was really helpful to use the impact cycle. The coaching was really primarily, though, focused on, as far as the in-house coaching, the instructional coaching piece was really focused on ELA. And so because it's the math specialists are supporting us, so that should work for math. And so what we decided to do is, okay, it's time to integrate and implement the impact cycle into mathematics, and let's see what changes from that. Another thing that I think is important to mention is that lead teachers in the building for every grade level attended DeForest training on PLCs the summer prior to this. And so they really understood that collective goals and vision was needed to implement this change. So it wasn't just going to be the instructional coaching piece that was added in, but collectively they were, pretty much frustrated by the results of student learning. So together we created this plan, which was, okay, we're going to identify what it is that's missing in our mathematics instruction and in our math classrooms by doing some walkthroughs that were really informal. So it was the math specialist, the instructional coach, and the administrator would just go in for 5 or 10 minutes through every classroom in the building. And this was a school of 520 students, K-5. And let's just see, let's see what we notice and get a sense of current reality. And so that's where we started, is by doing that, and then giving that information to teachers during professional learning community meetings, the weekly meetings, team meetings.
So you said you wanted to study a change in teaching and a change in students. How did you measure those 2 things?
Yes. So what we did is, after we got a sense of current reality where students were not being questioned enough and were not having enough discourse,
Right.
is we tied back the Danielson framework actually into it, and it was used as an evaluation tool in this particular state school district. But what we wanted to do was use it as its intent
Right.
by Charlotte, which is to improve instruction. And so we narrowed the focus for teachers because autonomy is always key to success, I believe. And so we said, here's some 6 categories from Danielson framework that you can choose from to improve. What was interesting is from the 19 teachers that participated in the study, 18 of them chose domain 3. So classroom management and communication with students. So 3B and 3C as their areas to improve. And so from there, we gave them the option of either being observed by instructional coach or recorded. And we were going to start looking at how many of their questions invited student discourse and thinking, and how many were more considered closed questioning, right or wrong answer.
Right.
And so almost all the participants chose to be recorded. That was something that we had been trying out the year before. So they were used to that and chose that. And then they sat down and actually wrote all their questions they asked during the lesson. And instructional coach, I did that same thing. And then we compared notes and then took a percentage. So how many of your questions were closed type questions, right or wrong answer? And how many were open questions that invited student discourse? And so what we saw kind of collectively is that 29% of the questions were open-ended questions.
After the coaching.
No, before. So that was your pre-assessment.
Right.
And since we made this decision to have everybody go through an instructional coaching cycle and take a year to do it, so one team member at a time per grade level, is we took what we call the post-assessment, another recording of a lesson at the end of the coaching cycle, 4 to 6 weeks, to see if their open-ended questioning improved. And what we saw is that in the beginning, 29% were using open-ended questioning. About 29% of their questions were open-ended questions, and that improved to 71% of their questions were open-ended questions. So it was a very dramatic change.
Yeah, tripled, or at least
very dramatic change.
2.5 times as much.
Right, because student discourse, that's one of the most important key elements in mathematics classrooms, is we don't have kids talking enough, sharing their thinking, verbalizing where they start to problem solve, talking with each other, comparing notes, letting them fix mistakes because they might learn from a partner. And so when that was all included, it really did revolutionize the way mathematics was being taught in the school. And then we measured student outcomes by comparing using ISAT results. Unfortunately, ISATs were used 3rd through 5th grade, so we weren't able to include all of the grade levels. But we compared the groupings from the year before to the groupings the year we did the study. And we saw growth comparisons between 5 and 28%. So our 4th graders to 5th graders, they're the ones who made that 28% gain in proficiency levels on the ISAT, just because we changed a few things. And then what was also critical is at the end of the coaching cycle, instead of having the math experts teach a lesson for the teacher to watch, is we had co-teaching happening between the math specialist and the teacher that was going through a coaching cycle. I think that was uncomfortable at first for them, but the willing went first from each grade level. And what was so incredible is those post-observation conversations. So all the team members from that team got to watch their colleague co-teach. And then we had a debrief session after that. And it was just so incredible because they were like, I didn't know you did that. Oh my gosh, I never saw so-and-so talk about math before. Or, oh my gosh, you asked this wonderful question and I wrote that down because I'm going to use that in my classroom tomorrow. So it was this whole revolution, the way, just being revolutionary and just being open with the conversation, inviting teammates in, and just beautiful conversations after. And so it just brought everybody together to be on the same team, aiming towards the same goals, which was we need students talking about mathematics and we need to be questioning them in a way that invites that discourse.
I love it. It's fun. Questioning is kind of a fun thing because it's fairly clear. Is it an open question or closed question? Is it right or wrong? Is it, I call it an opinion question, but a question that doesn't have a right or wrong. And the teachers kind of coach themselves. You know, you set it all up and you provide support, and you did co-teaching, which would be powerful for that. But they can see it themselves if they watch themselves on video, listen to the questions, they code their own questions. You you don't have to. You were using the term push. You don't have to push yourself in there. You can just facilitate the whole process, and it must have been pretty cool to see the results.
It was astounding to me. It was astounding because again, it was just small changes,
Right.
and the walkthroughs involved people they knew. The math specialists were people that was year 4 they worked with them. And so when that person came back and says, "This is what I'm seeing, students aren't talking about math. We need to have math models that everyone's using, like a handful of them." Um, it just, yeah, it just changed. Just small changes changed everything. And I think sometimes too, when we're asking teachers to learn new things, I think we underestimate how much it takes for the implementation process to occur. And so with that continuous support through an instructional coaching cycle offered the support they needed. And so
Mm.
even though at first it was a little bit scary, especially those who went through the first round of coaching cycle, they saw incredible benefits because their students were talking about the math and they became more confident in asking those open-ended questions, which don't come naturally to us sometimes as teachers. We like to make sure students are on the right track or they're answering things correctly, especially in math, when it should be all about the process from getting from the new learning that we're teaching students to the final outcome of full understanding. So, yeah.
Did anything, as you did your study, did anything surprise you?
I think the growth surprised me. I think the ISAT, especially between the 4th and 5th grade, those that were 5th graders, that really surprised me. I think the investment K-5 students had in the mathematics, that was one of the most surprising outcomes. So, and I'll give you a really good example of that. They're in the 5th grade classrooms. They were really focused on this, obviously, the open-ended questions, but they started grouping kids in small groups and having lots of discourse and narrowing the focus to just a few math problems and really talking through it. But one day I was in there observing the teacher and the bell rang and the next period was lunch. The next thing was lunch. You think everyone would just be like putting their stuff away and just like jetting to the front door to be in a line. But all the kids collectively went, "Oh, man," because they hadn't finished talking about the math. They hadn't finished the problem yet. And so the teacher said, "Just leave it on your whiteboards. Just put it on your desk. Well, you can have time to keep working on this." And a few said, "Can we take our whiteboards out in the hall when we're lined up? Because we're still thinking about this." And so a bunch of kids went outside in the line with their whiteboards. So students were, really invested in the discussion. Also, I think what really surprised me too is the math specialists, they never wanted to know the different levels of certain students. So sometimes teachers would say, "Well, before you come into the classroom to do like the co-teaching, do you want to know the kids that don't get math very well or are struggling?" And the math specialist would always say, "No, I don't want to know any of that information." And so when they would come and co-teach and they would start asking open-ended questions to any kid, almost every single time this happened and we had our debrief sessions after the co-teach, classroom teachers were surprised and always mentioned that. Like, "Oh my gosh, that's the first time so-and-so ever shared anything." And their thinking was really on point, or, "Man, I didn't know they had that much understanding." So that was another really nice moments about the study. I think too, what surprised me is how worried teachers were to do the co-teach. They felt that maybe they just didn't have enough skill. They were really worried about it in the beginning. They because we're asking them to be vulnerable and to co-teach in front of their teammates. And that just kind of melted away after a while. And they saw the huge benefits of the co-teach. And in the qualitative parts of the study, I think what surprised me is how one of the themes was we feel so much more confident in our ability to teach mathematics after this coaching cycle and the co-teach. So that was another really amazing outcome from the study.
It was so much fun to read about. It's even more fun talking about it. Is there anything else you want to add to the conversation?
I would just say that I would just encourage school districts to invest in instructional coaches and invest in training your instructional coaches. And even another added layer to that is have them learn some about leadership, effective leadership. Because that can really change your mindset as an instructional coach, that you're not just going to go in there and just change every teacher's pedagogy and change everything that's being done in the classroom. That never works. But if you learn some leadership skill and you provide some training for your instructional coaches in that realm, that can really help move the change forward.
I love it. Well, thank you. I'm so grateful for the research, grateful for the conversation. I'm hoping this isn't our last conversation because it was so much fun. But congratulations. It's really a wonderful study. You should be proud of the work you've done.
Yeah, thank you, Jim, for the invite. I really appreciate it. This is one of the highlights for me, truly, of my career. So thank you very much.
Well, the highlight is the work you did. You did something awesome. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.